Money. It is something we all need, something we all use, and something that has the power to shape the quality of our lives. Yet, despite its importance, so many people struggle with money on a daily basis. They live paycheck to paycheck, constantly stressed about bills, overwhelmed by debt, and unable to break free from financial hardship. But here's the question: why do so many people struggle with money? Why does it seem like financial freedom is a distant dream for the majority, while only a few seem to crack the code and build wealth with ease? The truth is, financial struggles rarely come down to a single reason. Instead, it's often a combination of habits, beliefs, and external pressures that create a cycle of hardship. To truly understand why people struggle with money, we need to dig deeper, not just into numbers and budgets, but into human behavior, psychology, and the way society programs us to think about money. Let's break down the most powerful reasons behind money struggles, and more importantly, how to overcome them. Lack of financial education. The most fundamental reason why people struggle with money is simple: they were never taught how money works. Think back to school. We learned algebra, geometry, history, biology, and maybe even how to analyze Shakespeare. But how many of us were taught about taxes, credit, investing, or even how to manage a basic budget? For most people, the answer is never. This lack of financial education creates adults who enter the real world completely unprepared for the financial challenges they'll face. They start earning money without understanding how to save it, spend it wisely, or grow it. They sign up for credit cards without realizing the long-term cost of interest. They take out massive loans for cars, degrees, or homes without truly understanding repayment terms. The financial system is not designed to make people rich. It is designed to make people participate. And without education, most people become consumers rather than wealth builders. They spend instead of invest. They borrow instead of save. And once they're caught in the cycle of debt, escaping it becomes increasingly difficult. The harsh reality is that financial illiteracy is expensive. Every mistake, late fees, overdrafts, high-interest loans, chips away at a person's wealth. Meanwhile, those who understand how money works are able to use the system in their favor. Living paycheck to paycheck. Another huge reason people struggle with money is that they live paycheck to paycheck. On the surface, this may seem like a problem of not earning enough. And while low wages certainly play a role for many people, the deeper issue often lies in lifestyle choices and a lack of planning. When someone lives paycheck to paycheck, every dollar that comes in is already spent before it even arrives. Rent, bills, subscriptions, groceries, car payments, and other expenses swallow up your income instantly. There's no buffer, no savings, and no room for error. If an emergency happens, like a medical bill, a broken car, or a job loss, financial disaster strikes immediately. This fragile situation creates constant stress. The person is trapped in survival mode, making decisions based on immediate needs rather than long-term goals. Instead of asking, how can I build wealth over the next 10 years, they're asking, how can I afford to get through next week? One reason people end up living paycheck to paycheck is because of lifestyle inflation. As their income grows, so do their expenses. Instead of saving the raise or investing the bonus, they buy a nicer car, upgrade their apartment, or add more luxuries. They never escape the cycle because their spending always rises to match their earnings. Debt and the cost of borrowing. Debt is one of the biggest chains holding people back financially. Credit card debt, student loans, car loans, personal loans, payday loans, the list goes on. And while some forms of debt, like a mortgage, can be considered investments if managed properly, most debt is simply a wealth killer. The problem with debt isn't just the amount borrowed, but the interest. Interest ensures that people pay far more back than they originally borrowed, turning everyday purchases into long-term burdens. For example, someone who buys a $1,000 television on a credit card and only makes minimum payments could end up paying $2,000 or more by the time the balance is cleared. This is how the system traps people. Banks and lenders make money from keeping people in debt. And when people rely on credit to fund their lifestyle, they end up working not for themselves, but for the financial institutions collecting their payments every month. Psychologically, debt also creates a heavy burden. It limits freedom, creates stress, and forces people into decisions they might not otherwise make. Instead of choosing a job they love, they might choose one they hate simply because it pays enough to cover the bills. Instead of taking risks, they play it safe because they can't afford failure. Debt robs people not just of money, but of opportunity. Poor spending habits. One of the harsh realities is that many people struggle with money simply because they make poor spending choices. This isn't to say that financial hardship is always the result of bad habits. There are structural issues like income inequality and rising costs of living that play a massive role. But for many, money slips through their fingers because they don't control where it goes. Impulse buying, overspending on wants instead of needs, and falling for consumer culture all contribute to financial struggles. People spend money on the newest phones, designer clothes, or expensive dinners while neglecting savings and investments. Social media makes this worse by creating constant pressure to keep up with others. Often, people tell themselves, "I deserve this," after a long week of work. And while treating yourself occasionally is healthy, when treating yourself becomes the norm, financial disaster follows. Over time, small unnecessary expenses add up to thousands of dollars lost. Poor spending habits usually come from a lack of awareness. Many people don't track their money, so they don't even realize how much they're spending. Without a budget, it feels like money disappears mysteriously, when in reality, it's being drained by daily habits, like coffee runs, takeout meals, or subscriptions. Emotional relationship with money. Money is not just numbers, it's deeply emotional. People's financial decisions are often driven by fear, guilt, shame, or desire rather than logic. This emotional relationship with money explains why people know they should save or invest but still don't. For example, some people use shopping as a way to cope with stress or unhappiness. Buying something new gives them a short burst of joy, even if it harms their financial health long term. Others grew up in households where money was always scarce, which creates a scarcity mindset in adulthood. They feel anxious about money, so they either hoard it obsessively or spend recklessly because they believe they'll never truly have enough. On the flip side, some people were raised in environments where money was always abundant. This can lead to a careless relationship with money, where they assume there will always be more, even when that isn't the case. Without addressing the emotional side of money, logical strategies like budgeting and investing often fail. That's why personal finance experts emphasize the importance of mindset. Until someone changes the way they think and feel about money, their financial habits won't change. Lack of long-term thinking. Another reason people struggle with money is short-term thinking. Many people focus on immediate gratification rather than long-term financial health. They ask, "How can I enjoy this money today?" instead of, "How can I use this money to secure my future?" This short-term mindset is reinforced by society. Advertisements constantly encourage instant gratification. Buy now, pay later. Credit cards make it easy to enjoy something instantly while postponing the cost. Social media highlights lifestyles of luxury, making people crave immediate rewards rather than delayed success. But wealth is built slowly through consistent saving, investing, and patience. People who think long-term understand that sacrificing small pleasures today can create massive freedom tomorrow. On the other hand, people who think only of the short term remain trapped, always prioritizing comfort now over freedom later. External pressures and the cost of living. Of course, we can't ignore external realities. For many people, struggling with money isn't about bad habits or poor decisions, it's about the rising cost of living and stagnant wages. Housing, healthcare, education, and basic necessities have all become increasingly expensive over time, while salaries haven't always kept pace. This economic reality makes it extremely difficult for many families to save or invest, no matter how disciplined they are. Even those who live frugally may find themselves barely scraping by because the system itself is stacked against them. Additionally, societal pressures, like the expectation to go to college and take on student debt, to own a home, or to live a certain lifestyle, create additional financial burdens. People often borrow money not because they're irresponsible, but because society tells them it's the normal thing to do. Fear of investing and taking risks. Many people also struggle financially because they're afraid of investing. They see the stock market, real estate, or business opportunities as too risky, so they avoid them altogether. Instead, they keep their money in savings accounts where it earns almost nothing, slowly losing value to inflation. This fear often comes from a lack of knowledge. Investing seems complicated and intimidating, so people avoid it rather than learn. But the irony is that by avoiding risk, they actually take on the biggest risk of all, the risk of never building wealth. Those who build financial freedom are often the ones willing to take calculated risks. educate themselves and step outside of their comfort zone. Those who avoid risk entirely remain stuck in financial stagnation, not seeking help or advice. Finally, many people struggle with money because they try to figure it out alone. Money can be overwhelming, and yet people often feel ashamed to ask for help. They don't talk about their financial problems with friends or family. They don't seek out mentors, coaches, or even free resources online. Instead, they suffer in silence, repeating the same mistakes year after year. The truth is, financial success is often built on knowledge and guidance. By learning from others who have mastered money, people can avoid costly mistakes and accelerate their progress. But pride, shame, or fear often hold them back from reaching out. So, why do people struggle with money?
It's not one simple reason, but a web of interconnected factors. Lack of financial education, living paycheck to paycheck, debt, poor spending habits, emotional baggage, short-term thinking, rising costs of living, fear of investing, and the unwillingness to seek help. The good news is, these struggles can be overcome. By educating ourselves, becoming aware of our habits, changing our mindset, and seeking guidance, anyone can break free from financial hardship and build a life of freedom and security. Money doesn't have to be a constant source of stress. With the right approach, it can become a tool for empowerment, opportunity, and independence. The first step is awareness. Once we understand why people struggle with money, we can begin the journey toward never struggling again.